All right, thrilled to be joined now by Antonio Daniels, locked on NBA expert. Antonio, before we get into the Kevin Love of this, there's a little Donovan Mitchell, Cleveland Cavaliers reporting. Not a ton of meat on okay, would the Cavs offer X amount of picks? What young players? What would you make of the Cavs having real interest in getting inside the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes?
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. But I think there's a drastic difference between the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes from the New York Knicks perspective and the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes from the Cleveland Cavaliers perspective. We got to understand the difference in two teams here. The Cleveland Cavaliers last year, if they didn't get injured, if they didn't run into the injury bug, they're a playoff team. I think we all know and think that. The New York Knicks finished 11th in the Eastern Conference. No disrespect to the Knicks, those are just facts, right? The New York Knicks think Donovan Mitchell can get them plus 10 in the win count, right? They think that he can get him from 11 to 6. I get the thought process. I get it. If I'm the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I also understand that we'll be a really, really good team with or without Donovan Mitchell. You know, you got one of the best point guards in the Eastern Conference in Darius Garland, right? You got 3 7-footers across the front line. You got an all-star in Jared Allen. You know, you got Karis LeVert. You got Kevin Love, who has welcomed that new role. Ricky Rubio back. So if I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, my thought process is Donovan Mitchell is a really good basketball player. All-star, perennial all-star, 25, 26 points per game. But if we don't acquire Donovan Mitchell, and I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I'm still excited about what's going on in Cleveland with J.B. Bickerstaff and that coaching staff. So I think there's a drastic difference in the two situations from the Knicks perspective and from the Cavs perspective.
Would there be a price for Donovan Mitchell if you're Cleveland, a number of picks, if they wanted like a Jared Allen or whatever it is? Is there a price that would be in your mind too high for Donovan Mitchell?
Yes. Of course. But you know why the price would be too high, Chris? Because of the success that the Cleveland Cavaliers experienced this past year. One of the things that they had going for them was chemistry and camaraderie. You don't want to disturb that, especially when you haven't had the opportunity to see and feel that potential yet. If you're a Cleveland Cavaliers fan and you can sit here right now and tell me, you know what, I think that the way that this roster is constructed, they have reached their peak. Now we can have a different conversation. But we know that's not the case. Mm-hmm. We saw Ricky Rubio go down in New Orleans last year. We saw Jared Allen get hurt at the end of the year last year. No, this team has not even scratched the surface yet. And what you don't want to do with the team that has not even scratched the surface yet is disturb what you have going. Yes, I love Donovan Mitchell, one of my favorite players in the league on and off the floor, but I do think there is a price too high, especially when you are a good basketball team with or without him.
Yeah, I agree, especially as you're trying to, number one, navigate a market where the prices for guys right now are crazy. Like, look what the Jazz just got for Rudy Gobert. Look what the Hawks paid for DeJounte Murray. Look what the Nets reportedly wanted before Kevin Durant, before they issue a team statement and say, we're fine, like nothing to see here. The price for really good players right now, especially ones that are under contract, is astronomically high. And I can understand if you're the Cavs, you're saying, okay, you want 5 picks and Jared Allen and Sexton and whatever. It's like, it's a lot. And you're right. They're not at the title. They're not like, okay, we got to maximize this 1 year. They can take the time and look long term. And Tony, let's move on. Finish with Kevin Love. Rebound year last year, you mentioned before. When you think of Kevin Love, and obviously he's not like retiring as far as we know, like after this year or anything, but when you think of him and the career he's had, what do you think of first when I say the name Kevin Love?
Sacrifice.
Okay.
That's what I think of more than anything else. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when I think of the championship that was won in Cleveland, you know what's talked about a lot? The rundown block by LeBron James.
Yep.
Right? Kyrie Irving hitting the biggest shot in Cleveland Cavaliers history. I'm a firm believer that with that big three, just like the big three in Miami, Kevin Love was not the best or most skilled player, but he was the most important because he had sacrificed the most. LeBron got to still be LeBron. Kyrie Irving still got to be Kyrie Irving. Kevin Love had to completely transform who he was. Understand who we're talking about here. There was a time where Kevin Love was in Minnesota, and arguably statistically speaking, was arguably the best power forward in the league with some of the numbers that he was putting up. So now you put him with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, and he's not even that guy anymore because he doesn't have to be that guy anymore. So what he became was a knockdown three-point shooter, still a heck of a rebounder, and a heck of an outlet passer. When I think of Kevin Love, the first thing that comes to my mind is sacrifice, because I remember Kevin Love in Minnesota. I remember the numbers that he was putting up. But then I remember who Kevin Love became to help the Cleveland Cavaliers win the NBA championship.
Yeah, there is such a switch for him in his career, the way he played, his body type even. Rick Adelman offense, posting up, elbow touches, to very little of that in Cleveland. He became maybe the best floor spacer, the most glorified floor spacer in the league, and that's what he was. And his final, you go to the 2016 finals, his numbers don't pop off the board. He averaged under 10 points a game in that finals. He had a concussion in that finals. It wasn't remarkable, but he steps on Steph Curry. He sacrifices. He's willing to do that stuff you said. So, Antonio, when you look ahead, lastly, for him this season, coming off the year he had, no injuries, fingers crossed for him, it doesn't happen, that he can avoid that again. What is the key for him at 35, last year of his contract, trying to continue the success he had last year in a new role, in a bench role? What are the keys for him to kind of sustain that success going forward?
Which, to a certain degree, you can't control. You can come in the best physical shape and conditioning as possible. But also, second, is just buying in and being a good locker room guy, which he was this past year. Go back 2-3 years ago, because Kevin Love wasn't this same guy in that locker room. Kevin Love was pouting on the floor. He was throwing the ball at teammates. The mannerisms weren't very professional.
No.
Last year he bought in. And this is why I give JB Bickerstaff and his coaching staff a lot of credit. Because when you can get veterans to buy in on a young, inexperienced basketball team, you're doing something right. So one, I think health is incredibly important for Kevin Love. Two, it's just buying in and building on what you did this past year. The rest will take care of itself. Yep, you're 35 years old. You don't need to play 30, 35 minutes a night. But at that time that you're given, maximizing that time that you're given. And you may get older and slower and less athletic and less agile, but you become smarter. And that's what you can see Kevin Love tapping into as he gets older. He's tapping into his mental strength on how to be successful and sustain in this league for a lengthy amount of time and still be impactful in doing it.
The last thing I'll ask is, as someone who's played in the league, has been around the league a long time, you look at what Kevin Love provides to a team that has Darius Garland, who's just hitting year 4. Evan Mobley is in year 2. Jared Allen is really still young in his career. Colin Sexton, if he's back, still very young in his career. What is having a guy like Kevin Love, who bought in last year, who's won a title, who's played with arguably the greatest player of all time, what does that offer this team as the young guys are bringing them up and he's there in that support role?
I think that's incredibly important. And I think that's one of the things that's missing a lot in today's NBA, because the NBA is getting younger. You have guys that are one and dones that are coming into this league like it's nothing. So you need that locker room stability. You need that locker room voice, that voice of reason. But not just that voice of reason, that voice of experience that can tell them what it takes to win. You know why? Because he's been there. He's been there. It's different when you have guys in the locker room that are telling you how to win and they have not been to the mountaintop. Kevin Love has been there and he's won there. So he's been there and lost and he's been there and won. So when you have a guy in your locker room, one that can verbally deliver the right message, but two is still impactful on the floor, man, you're knocking it out the park. Because a lot of guys in this age, they get to be 36 and 37, they may be able to tell young guys what to do, but they can't show guys what to do. Kevin Love's in a blessed position where he can not only tell guys what it takes to win, but also at 35 years old, show them physically what it takes to win.
Antonio, thanks so much for coming on. Everyone can check him out this season's on Pelicans broadcast. He's on various Locked On podcasts talking all things NBA. Antonio, a pleasure as always.